the message was never received, and the Israeli fighters entered Iraq undeterred. The fighters split up and flew low to avoid radar. A half hour before the Israelis arrived, a group of Iraqi soldiers left their anti-aircraft guns to have a meal. They also turned off the radars. The fighters would still encounter some anti-aircraft resistance, but in 2 minutes they launched all 16 of the 2,000-pound bombs and began their return trip to Israel. At least 8 of the 16 bombs hit the containment dome of the reactor. 10 Iraqi soldiers and 1 French civilian were killed. All the Israeli pilots would return safely home. The operation succeeded, and it delayed Saddam Hussein's attempts at becoming a nuclear power. Israel would be condemned for their actions, but when the First Gulf War started, the wisdom of these actions was very apparent. The attempts by Middle Eastern countries to obtain nuclear power would not end there. Iran in recent years has been steadily marching in that direction, but in 2007 events unfolded that shed light on Syria's secret attempt at becoming a nuclear power. In 2001, Mossad was gathering intelligence on Bashar al-Assad, Syria's new dictator. Bashar came into power in July of the year 2000, after his father's death. He was not his father's first choice to take over after his passing. His first heir, Bassel al-Assad, died in a high-speed car accident in 1994 when he crashed his Mercedes into a motorway roundabout in foggy conditions. The Israeli intelligence community began to see a lot of communication between Assad and North Korea. North Korea for many years has been developing its nuclear program and had nuclear reactors. In 1994, the Clinton administration supposedly brokered a deal with Kim Jong-il to stop his development of nuclear weapons, for food for its people, and the use of peaceful nuclear power. In the end, it was a sham. North Korea kept on developing their nuclear weapons, and in 2006, detonated its first nuclear bomb. The Israelis began to suspect that Assad may be trying to develop nuclear bombs. As time would go by, events would prove that that theory was correct. On April 22, 2004, a North Korean freight train exploded on its way to the port of Nampu. Mossad had learned that dozens of Syrian nuclear technicians were traveling in a compartment near a sealed wagon. The explosion killed all of the Syrians. North Korean officials cordoned off a large area around the explosion, and the bodies of the Syrian technicians were sent back to their country in lead coffins. Apparently they had come to North Korea to collect the fissionable material needed for their nuclear program. The North Koreans had to decontaminate the area, and it was days before they allowed people back into the area. In the following years, Mossad would document around a dozen trips by Syrian military officials and scientists visiting high-ranking North Korean officials. In December of 2006, Mossad had tracked a top Syrian official to London. While one group was trailing the official, another broke into his hotel room and found his laptop, examining the information on it. They found blueprints and hundreds of pictures showing a nuclear facility in different stages of construction. Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert was immediately notified, and he formed a 3-member panel to gather information on the nuclear facility. 6 months later, the panel would report that Syria, North Korea, and Iran were working on the project. Iran had funneled $1 billion into the facility as a backup to their own nuclear program. In the summer of 2007, Israeli commandos from the Sayeret Matkal reconnaissance unit covertly raided the site, gathering nuclear materials and soil samples. The soil samples revealed traces of nuclear activity. Israel informed the U.S., and according to George W. Bush, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert requested that the U.S. bomb the nuclear site. President Bush refused because he felt the intelligence was not definitive enough. He felt that the intelligence was not definitive enough that the site was a nuclear reactor. Another report indicated that Israel wanted to bomb the site as early as July 14th, but Condoleezza Rice and other U.S. officials wanted a public condemnation of Syria, thus delaying the strike until Israel felt it could hold back no longer. Operation Orchard was the code name given to the strike. On September 5, 2007, Israel inserted a team of Shaldog unit commandos to the area. On September 6, they sent 7 Israeli F-15I Ram fighter jets with F-16I Sukhoi and a Elint aircraft into Syrian airspace. The Israelis jammed the Syrian radar defenses, and the attack force flew to the Deir ez-Zor region of Syria. to the nuclear facility. The Israeli commandos targeted the site with lasers, and the aircraft destroyed the site. After the operation, Ehud Olmert called Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan to explain what had gone on and for him to give a message to Bashar Assad that Israel would not tolerate another nuclear plant and that no further action was planned. Still wanting peace with Syria, Olmert said if Assad would not draw attention to the incident, they wouldn't do so. And that's pretty much what happened. There was virtually no reaction by the Arab world and press to the operation. Syria had been caught with its hand in the cookie jar, no matter how it could have been spun by Assad. 5 years later, Assad's fighting a civil war in his country, and Iran is on the verge of their nuclear reactors going online. Israel is again faced with a tough decision to go in and destroy Iran's nuclear facilities alone or with help, or allow them to go nuclear. In March of this year, Benjamin Netanyahu met with President Obama to discuss the Iran situation. Netanyahu argued that there isn't a lot of time before military action should be taken to stop Iran's nuclear ambitions. Obama was reported to have disagreed with Netanyahu, believing that sanctions and diplomacy could still be used to stop Iran. The Israeli people are also divided as well. A recent poll showed that up to 65% of the Israeli population do not favor a strike. A U.S. poll shows a similar result. It's not all that surprising that military action is not that popular right now. I think the Israeli people realize that they will not walk away unscathed by this action, and that a regional war could break out. The U.S. is still in hard economic times, and high gas prices brought on by the situation is hurting them as well as many of the population being war-weary from Iraq and Afghanistan. When and if an attack occurs, gas prices will soar. Iran will possibly try to close the Straits of Hormuz. The strait connects the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea. 20% of the world's oil goes through the 21-mile wide gap between Iran and the United Arab Emirates and Oman. Without U.S. help, the strike against Iran can be very difficult for Israel. A lot could go wrong. There may be around 12 different nuclear sites spread around the country, and Hamas and Hezbollah are likely to launch as many as 50,000 missiles at Israel. The Israelis face a tough decision: to try and stop Iran and have cities devastated by missiles in a possible war, or one day face destruction from a nuclear bomb. 2012 saw the return of devastating tornadoes in the U.S., mainly in the states of Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, Alabama, and Georgia, but even more recently in Texas. January started as a highly active month for tornadoes, third highest recorded behind 2008 and 1999. In February, the tornadoes slowed down to a trickle, but by early March, a rash of deadly tornadoes broke out. By March 5th, 39 people were reported dead, 21 in Kentucky, 13 in Indiana, 3 in Ohio, and 1 in Alabama and Georgia. So far, over 361 tornadoes have been reported this year, resulting in over 54 deaths. Vladimir Putin has again become Russia's president. Putin served as Russia's president between the years 2000 and 2008. The Russian constitution prohibited him from running for a third term in 2008. It was well known that he had planned to run again in 2012 and had installed one of his yes men as president until he could run again. Widespread allegations of fraud followed the election. Putin received 60% of the votes. Large protests occurred, but no real investigations have been launched into the possible voter fraud. Putin will be installed as president in May. A new trend in Christian circles is being pushed, usually by large megachurches and those who are trying to unite the world's faiths. Christian groups have been courting Muslims, not to promote Jesus as the only way to God for salvation, but an effort to equate Allah and Yahweh as the same God that both faiths worship, in an effort to promote common ground between the religions. The Muslim faith for years has tried to promote the idea that Allah was the God of the Bible and Torah, and that Islam is the fulfillment of the three faiths. Different activities, from meetings to dinners between the groups, have gone on. Some churches have even allowed Muslims to hold Friday prayers in their churches. As Christians, we are told to love our enemies and to generally not be discourteous to people. But some of these actions are going over the line. A church should never allow another God to be worshipped in their church. If you accept Allah as the same God of the Bible,